77 lines of code. You will need it in every app, and believe me, you will rarely need anything more complicated. I've picked up a few tips that not many developers know about. Obviously, we need an on-press callback and a title. Then we can define an empty function. The button should be wrapped in the pressable component. Add text. Wow, now it says something groundbreaking, I know. We will add some styling, so let's wrap the text in a view. Now we will define the styles using stylesheet create. But let me tell you a little secret. All the stylesheet create does is check the types. But it's recommended to use it, so we'll use it. We will style the container and also the title. Let's add some basic styles. We want a purple background, so we will use Rebecca purple color. We want to center the content both horizontally and vertically. I like to sort properties and object keys alphabetically. Every time you sort things randomly, like it in dice, so keep that in mind. We want some padding around the content, and we want rounded borders. Now, we also need to style the title because it's not readable. That's all, guys. I'm kidding. We have a button that works, but you want your users to know they have tapped the button, right? Skip this step if you want your users to tap the buy button twice by accident. Fortunately, the pressable component exposes the pressed variable, so it's easy to style the button based on its state. Instead of using simple style object, we will use an array which will be merged automatically. Now all we need to do is to change background color based on the button state. Now we can remove the background color from the styles object because it's being overwritten anyway. Now we want to add an icon to the button because buttons without icons are just plain sad. I don't know which icon font you're going to use or if you're going to use multiple fonts or SVGs. So the best way is to pass the icon element directly to the button. So we are going to use an optional icon property of type React element and then just render it before the title. We need to add flex direction row to the styles to render the icon side by side with the title, and a gap to add some space between them. Now some secret tips. Tip number 1. Guess what's going to happen if the title is too long? Yes, it's going to break the layout because the title is going to use more rows. To fix this, we can add number of lines property to the text with a value of 1. Your button will thank you later. But wait, what happened to the horizontal padding? In React Native, the text doesn't shrink to adapt to its parent component. What a disobedient child! To fix it, we need to explicitly tell the text component to shrink if it doesn't fit. Another way to handle long texts could be to use adjusts font size to fit property. Now, what if we need to disable the button for some reason? We can introduce another optional property. Let's call it isDisabled. I'm disabled! I like to prefix Boolean properties with is and has, and you should do it too. You will thank me later. It's going to have a default value of false. When the button is disabled, the common way to indicate it is to lower its opacity. This is how it will look like being disabled. Now, how to indicate a loading state? We will need another optional property. Let's call it, wait for it, is loading. It's also going to be false by default and the button won't be pressable while in loading state. We will need the activity indicator component from React Native. And when the button is in the loading state, we will render the activity indicator instead of the title. Notice the button's height is changing a bit. It's because the activity indicator does not have the exactly same height as the title. To quickly fix it without worrying about the text line height, we can set the button's height. The text is always going to use one line anyway. Let's set it to
42.
Secret tip number 2, hit slop. This property is an absolute lifesaver for people like me. You know, that kind of person who misses the confirm button and accidentally deletes everything. With hit slop, even if your aim is terrible, you can still hit the button. Now, that's almost all, but do you know what we forgot? That's right, accessibility. Because even if someone can't see your perfectly designed button, doesn't mean they should not be able to use it, right? The button title is not always enough because it's missing the context. We will need 2 more optional but recommended properties to describe the button a bit more. Accessibility hint and label. I will give you examples in a minute. We just pass these 2 properties to the pressable for now. To make the button even more accessible, we will add 2 more properties directly to the pressable component. Firstly, let's indicate our component has some role. The accessibility role tells the screen reader what's the purpose of the element. Maybe button? And finally, tell the screen reader the button is busy when loading and disabled while disabled or loading. That was easy, right? You can find a link to the GitHub repository in the description. There is also a link to the Expo Snacks, so you can dive in and play with the code right away. If you like my code and are looking for ready-made solutions, enhanced animations, finely tuned components, and complete templates for your React Native apps, then check out reactnativestore.com. Now the usage. We need to add 2 required properties, the onPress and the title. We can also add some fancy icon. We can disable the button.
We can't touch this.
And enable it again. And we can change its state to loading when the user taps it. As I said before, the title is missing the context. While the title can be just buy, the accessibility label should be, for example, buy MacBook Pro for $2,000. And the accessibility hint should tell the user what happens when they hit the button. So for example, add MacBook Pro for $2,000 to the shopping cart and navigate to the checkout screen. Now, let's test it a bit. As I said before, even the wildest translations won't break the layout. But what about a right to left layout? Will our button survive? Let's see. Because we used flex direction row, React Native handles this automatically, this swap of elements. If you need to also change the icon direction, you can do it like this. Don't try to rotate it, because while it works for the arrow icon, doesn't mean it's gonna work for every icon. What if you don't want the button to take the full width? Just wrap it in a row. And what about the dark mode? We didn't handle it explicitly. Let's see. Yeah, it works. It just works. And what about Android? And what about the web? No, it's broken. Except it's not. And that's the power of React Native and Expo, my friends. One code base, 3 platforms, 0 compromises. You have to love it. So what do we have? A button that's user-friendly, developer-friendly, accessible, and internationalization ready. You're welcome. Why not just use a library? Well, if you love extra dependencies, breaking changes, mysterious bugs, sure, just go ahead. But for something as simple as a button, I would rather stick to my own code, but it's up to you. Want to tweak it further? Rounded button, update border radius, icon on the right, switch it. Border, edit. Multiple sizes or colors, just add config object and pick the right value depending on the past property. And if your designer shows up with some avant-garde masterpiece, don't blame me, blame them. Animations though, that's the whole other story, and I will cover it in a separate video. So what's the next tutorial you wanna see? Animations, state management, or maybe more buttons? Drop your ideas in the comments. And while you're at it, look closer at the subscribe button. It's not as beautiful as my buttons, but it's gonna make me hiccup every time someone presses it. Right. And don't miss my next tutorial on animating buttons. It's easier than you think and it looks way cooler than you would expect. See you there!